Okay, so I'm just going to briefly cover a few more aspects of these sections. I actually did put in, there's two chapters into one. Um, and again, I'm always regretful of how many things I have to bypass in order to try to focus on particular parts of information. Um, the Whiskey Rebellion and the legacy it has, I think, of interest. And again, it's also one of those important events that is not discussed that often. This is an introduction to this to you, and that's all I want to say about that for any further for now. Um, Going back to the legacy of George Washington, that I just want to finish saying about him is that many know this, but not everyone, that he was really celebrated for the fact that he stepped down as a popular president and set the precedent that a president has limited terms and not unlimited power. And this is kind of almost the added beginnings to creating a mythological, not to use the word mythological, legendary George Washington that is going to just add to his prestige and his legacy as a man who had the ability to take on almost the role of a dictator, but still stepped down. Despite the fact that he consolidated quite a bit of power as a president and used it, he didn't abuse it. And I think that was able. I think George Washington was very shrewd about how he left his legacy behind. And so I just kind of wanted to point that out. Now, after his presidency, the issue that you saw with the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists was going to be kind of switched into, really, you could call Democratic Republicans or Republicans and the Federalists that had opposing views about still what should happen in this nation. Okay, and by the election of 1796, John Adams becomes the second president. Jefferson is the vice president. And in the middle of this is when you have the French Revolution. So remember how much we relied on the French for help. But this revolution is going to spill into creating quite a bit of complications for the new state. On one hand, they helped us, and we had a revolution. So many of the revolutionaries would say, wow, you should be helping us. Many of the monarchies going to think, we helped you. That's ungrateful. But ultimately, we were. There was a lot of expectation to help. Now, on top of that, America started to develop better relations with Great Britain and Spain for some recent treaties, and the revolution split many Americans as to what side they should be on. It kind of reminds me of the Arab Spring, although not the same way, but you started having the citizens of Arab countries rebelling against dictatorship, calling for Hurriya, in Arabic, freedom. Okay? And, the Egyptian military, by the way, currently is the largest military aid recipient of the U.S. government. Yes, Egypt gets the second largest military aid from the U.S. government, and it's basically to secure that they don't fight with Israel, which gets our first largest military aid. Now, when this revolution started to occur, or an attempted to occur, here we've been talking about, we go to war, Operation Iraqi Freedom. We're going to support people rising up against dictatorships, and this is a dictatorship that is getting the second largest military aid recipient funding, but which also provides security for a major ally of the United States government. And I think it became a very awkward moment for U.S. politicians as to what sides to take, since we were already on the side of dictatorships. But that, we're securing the U.S. government's interests. And here you have the French Revolution taking place, I think, on a grander scale. What is the interest of the United States is not to get involved in any more nonsense. We're trying to control our own country and prevent any more revolutions and insurrections and all this kind of stuff. And then there's this happening in a more radical revolution. Thomas Jefferson supported it. Actually, he supported the Shays Rebellion, unlike George Washington, as you saw, okay? Or at least he gave lip service to it. The same with the French Revolution. Ultimately, it was going to cause problems, and it's going to lead us into a little-known war with France, but which is going to inevitably lead us to getting more territory back in the United States. So what I'm going to do is, there's this guy, I watch many of his clips on dealing with little-known important wars, and I think he does a great analysis and brings it all together. I'm going to show you his discussion of that and what it means, what it meant for the United States. Okay, and just to point out, like all wars, here we go back to this issue about security and versus liberties. And we saw at the time, the Alien Act, the Sedition Act, were all controversial in dealing with basically the issues of security, again, that tension. Okay, and ultimately, I want to point out that we think about partisan politics now being complicated. Well, they were always, and in some degrees, can you imagine, on congressmen fighting each other? This happens in other parliaments in the world, even to this day. Ultimately, what I'm hoping that you get out of this as we move into the Jeffersonian era is a rocky start to a country, but a start nonetheless, and maintaining through internal strife, internal contradictions, and outside political contradictions, or outside conflicts that also have to deal with some of the contradictions of interest within the United States, and the way that elites and various citizens on the ground would feel. And so we have an imperfect set of circumstances, of course, and ultimately, though, the important part is that the revolution, the new government, actually maintains to the fact that we're still here to this day. And as you study revolutions in the world, you see that look at the Russian Revolution fell apart after not that long in relative history. Okay. Chinese Revolution, they are still around, the Chinese communists, but they shifted gears in what they do. I just want to kind of end on this note to say, in the French Revolution, Zhou Enlai, one of the top communists in China, was once asked what if he thought that the French Revolution was successful, and he said, kind of witting, maybe tongue-in-cheek, he said, "It's too early to tell." And I kind of feel like he was also hinting at his own Chinese Communist Revolution, which is, was it successful? And he's saying, revolutions, to really know if they're successful and that they fulfilled their mission, you're not going to see it right away. And I think I go back, forgive me, Fidel Castro, in his early years as a rebel against the dictator Batista, and he was a lawyer fighting actually a dictator that was actually supported by the United States. There's all these ironies in this life, right? He put out a pamphlet, history will absolve me. Well, will history absolve Fidel Castro? Will history absolve the French Revolution? Has it? The Chinese Communist Revolution? What about our revolution, right? These are the questions that people ask. And for now, the United States Revolution has created a reality that is still very strong, regardless of the controversies that we discuss in this class. And that's what I'll end for this section this week.